Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we can't wait to dive into week 2 of the FCS. College football is underway, and week 1 was probably more exciting than any of us could imagine. So here's what we have on tap for this week's episode. We have an interview with New York Giants long snapper Zach Diassi, a former Brown Bear. We're also going to go goal to goal with our FCS correspondents, give you news, notes, and tidbits from around the FCS. And as always, we'll have our game previews and upset specials, including where we were right and where we were wrong. But first, it's time to go into our 4-minute offense as we take a look at some of the key storylines around the FCS. Last week, we saw 3 FCS programs knock off FBS opponents. Eastern Washington outgunned Washington State 45-42. Northern Iowa out-physicaled Iowa State 25-20. And Richmond blew past the Virginia Cavaliers 37-20. Now, there were some other close calls as well, with Maine, Montana State, Furman, Cal Poly, South Dakota State, and Southern Illinois nearly pulling off the upset. It just proves the point that it doesn't matter who you are, where you play, on any given weekend, you can get beat. The Lafayette Leopards made a statement last week with their 24-10 victory over Central Connecticut State. This was a surprise because many, including myself, thought that the Leopards would be sound on defense and struggle offensively. That was the total opposite in this ball game, as Lafayette's quarterback Drew Reed went 31 of 42 for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their defense came to play as it held Central Connecticut State's offense to only 10 points and forcing 5 turnovers. The Leopards have an even bigger test this week as they play host to the Blue Hens of Delaware. Even though it's week 2, there are plenty of pivotal games both in conference and out of conference in the FCS this week. We'll break down some of these games in more detail later on in the show, but you have to look at Holy Cross, New Hampshire, Alabama State, Alcorn State, Eastern Washington, North Dakota State, Montana, Northern Iowa, just to name a few. Every week in the FCS builds towards the FCS playoffs, which makes each game, no matter who you play, very important. And finally, let's take a look back at last week and hand out some awards. Our Offensive Player of the Week goes to sophomore quarterback Gabe Gubrut of Eastern Washington. The 6'2", 195-pound signal caller threw for 474 yards and 5 touchdowns in the upset victory over the Washington State Cougars. Gubrut completed 85% of his passes at a whopping 11.8 yards per attempt. Defensive Player of the Week goes to St. Francis defensive back Lorenzo Jerome, who was all over the field for the Red Flash as they nearly upset the Montana Grizzlies. Jerome, who's also known for his special teams exploits, picked off 2 passes and averaged 20 yards per punt return and 49 yards per kickoff return. The Special Teams Award goes to the Stony Brook Seawolves, who were on the verge of losing at home to North Dakota before blocking a punt for a score to snatch a victory away from the Fighting Hawks. You only need to win 2 out of the 3 aspects in the game to be successful, and they won both defense and special teams. And we'll take a quick break and be back with more FCS Kickoff.
Are you ready?
The Connecticut School of Broadcasting can help you reach the next level in the amazing world of broadcast and entertainment media.
I mentored several interns here at the Covino and Rich Show at SiriusXM, and the ones from CSB always stand out to me. They have a knowledge of the equipment, knowledge of editing, what it's like to be in a studio, and that always eliminates a huge learning curve.
Their professional studios give students a hands-on, learn-by-doing approach using equipment used in actual radio stations and TV studios. Visit our website at gocsb.com or call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Start today.
Now let's go goal to goal with our FCS correspondents.
The Missouri Valley Conference opened up with NDSU beating CSU in overtime. Missouri State shutting out Southwestern 57-0. Indiana State beat Butler 41-25. And South Dakota State's Jackrabbits losing to 13th ranked TCU 59-41. The Bison had the most anticipated game, but I feel the Jackrabbits had the most dramatic game, keeping TCU tied at halftime with senior wide receiver Jake Winicki, whose 8 receptions for 196 yards got him named co-MVSC Player of the Week. Some of the other games in the Valley to look for: Missouri State at Murray State, Indiana State versus Minnesota, and South Dakota State welcomes Drake. Check your local listings for time and station.
All right, now let's head to Northern Iowa, where the number 3 Panthers showed why they are a legitimate threat to NDSU with their gritty comeback to beat Iowa State 25-20 on the road behind quarterback Aaron Bailey, who threw for 135 yards, ran for 114 yards and 2 touchdown passes, and running back Tyvis Smith, who ran for 68 yards and caught 5 passes for 43 yards. With the win, head coach Mike Farley became the all-time winningest coach in program history with 130 wins.
For the latest in and around the Northeast Conference here on the FCS Kickoff Show, I'm Matt Chabatari. The 2016 season kicked off in the NAC this past weekend with 6 teams having eyes on taking down the defending champion Duquesne Dukes in 2016. One of the teams primed to do so is Coach Mark Knopfrey's Sacred Heart Pioneers. They opened on the road at the Stetson Hatters, an FCS team out of the Pioneer League. This was the first trip to Florida in program history. The game didn't start the way that they wanted, but senior quarterback RJ Noel was not going to let a halftime deficit put a damper on the start to their 2016 season. With the team trailing by 2, 14-12, heading into the fourth quarter, and 14:51 left on the clock, junior running back Jose Emilparia took the first play of the drive 80 yards to the house and put the Pioneers up for good in this one, 18-14. For all the latest on the NEC, check back into the FCS Kickoff Show next week with myself, Matt Chabatari.
Reporting for the FCS Kickoff, I'm Chris Fictel, here to bring you the latest on the Patriot League. Last week, we kicked off the season and all 7 teams played in their season opener. The Lafayette Leopards went on to beat Central Connecticut State 24-10 on the road to open up the season on Friday. 2 fourth-quarter touchdown passes from quarterback Drew Reed to wide receiver Matt Mrazek helped them to put the game away and to lead Lafayette to a 1-0 record. This week, Lafayette will play host to Joe Flacco's alma mater, the Delaware Fighting Blue Hens, in a battle to see who can start the season 2-0. With the FCS Kickoff, I'm Chris Fictel.
What's up, FCS fans? I'm Ray Ryan with your Big South Report. It was a busy week 1, so I'm here to give you all the news and notes from around the conference, and I'm also going to preview the week 2 matchups. But first, let's take a quick look at the Big South standings thus far. Gardner-Webb and Monmouth both stand at 1-0 after going on the road and defeating Elon and Lehigh respectively. Number 7 Charleston Southern bounced back after their opening week overtime loss, and number 1 North Dakota State, they destroyed Kentucky State 57-7 to improve to 1-1. And finally, Kennesaw State, Liberty, and Presbyterian will all be looking for their first victories this week. The Owls lost at home in double overtime to East Tennessee State, while the Flames and the Blue Hose both went on the road to FBS schools in their openers, falling to Virginia Tech and Central Michigan. Now, the major storyline for this coming week has to be the injury bug that has hit Charleston Southern. In their win over Kentucky State, they not only lost their starting quarterback, Kyle Copeland, for the rest of the season due to a torn ACL and MCL in his right knee, but backup QB Shane Buchanel and star running back / return man Darius Hammond also left the game with injuries. Head coach Jamie Chadwell told reporters that the Buchanel and Hammond injuries don't appear as serious, but he does not expect them to play at Florida State this week. And that is just a shame, because it would have been a great opportunity for the Buccaneers to face the number 3 team in the country. But without their top 2 signal callers and leading playmaker, I don't give them much of a chance in Tallahassee. Sure, the Seminoles showed themselves to be susceptible to the passing game against Ole Miss, allowing 419 yards in the air. But that was against a top QB in Chad Kelly, whereas Charleston Southern will be relying on redshirt freshman London Johnson. One Big South QB that did stay healthy, though, was Gardner-Webb's Tyrell Maxwell, who earned Big South Offensive Player of the Week honors for his dual-threat performance against Elon. Maxwell's 152 yards rushing and 102 yards passing set a Big South record, as this was the third time that the QB has eclipsed 100 yards rushing and passing in the same game. However, I think the Runnin' Bulldogs have one of the league's more intriguing matchups this week as they travel to Western Carolina. Sure, the Catamounts were blown out by East Carolina of the FBS last week, but they were a 7-4 team last year, and their redshirt freshman QB Tyree Adams had a solid debut. He threw for 167 yards and ran for 51 while falling victim to a tough luck interception off a receiver's hands to swing the game's momentum. Western Carolina will also be holding a whiteout at E.J. Whitmire Stadium for their home opener, so it should be a hostile environment for visiting Gardner-Webb. Now, two Big South teams who I think will have an easier time this week are Monmouth and Kennesaw State. The Hawks had a solid all-around performance at Lehigh with 215 yards on the ground and 3 TDs, while at the same time holding one of the league's top offenses from last year to only 80 yards rushing and 239 total yards. This week, the Hawks square off against a Delaware State team who was 1-10 in 2015 and is coming off a 56-14 loss against in-state rival Delaware. In that game, the Hornets allowed 395 yards rushing to the Fightin' Blue Hens, so I look for Monmouth running back Levon Chaney to have another big day. And after falling to Tennessee State 20-17 in overtime, look for Kennesaw State to claim victory this week too against Point University of the NAIA. Kennesaw will need to clean up the penalties as they were flagged 11 times for 93 yards in week 1, but defensive end Tenarius Porteous looks to be a force on the D-line. He recorded 5 tackles for a loss against East Tennessee, earning Big South Defensive Player of the Week honors. Week 2 opponent Point University is 0-2 on the young season and have already turned the ball over 7 times. And finally, two teams who I think will have a tougher time this week are Liberty and Presbyterian. Liberty's confidence had to have taken a hit after struggling in their 36-13 loss to Virginia Tech. And on Saturday, they will now face a Jacksonville team that was 9-2 a season ago and returns prominent players on offense and defense. That list includes all Pioneer League players in running back Ulysses Bryant and linebacker Grady Redding. This will be the Dolphins' first game of their 2016 campaign. And another team that could be in for a long day is Presbyterian as they travel to 6th-ranked Chattanooga. The Blue Hose are coming off a 49-3 loss at Central Michigan of the FBS, in which they were only able to gain 126 total yards while surrendering 492 to the Chippewas. Now they face a Chattanooga team that had an excellent performance from Alejandro Benefield in his debut under center. He threw 4 touchdowns in their 66-0 victory over Shorter University. I see more of the same from the Mocs this week as they try to live up to that number 6 ranking. Well, that's all for now from the Big South. I'm Ray Ryan, and I hope you enjoy the games.
Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our 2 newly released books, Football, A Love Story, and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books.
I think the FCS is really, when you look at it, it's the perfect model for football. Okay, in that as a coach, number one, you deal with Division I, it's great. You deal with a high level of athlete. In our case, you deal with a high level of student. It's extremely competitive football. It's a great environment, but it's also doesn't have some of the trappings that the bigger levels have as far as the business and the money of things. But it's pure football. And as a coach, that's what I like is it's about the football. And I think the way we determine our champion is the best playoff system in all of sports. And I think that you can never argue with who the national champion is at the FCS level. And it's just top to bottom the most competitive bracket of playoff sports there is in any of the sports. So, if you like the action, I think the quality of play is extremely high. I think the quality of person is extremely high. I think there's some great coaches at our level, and it's attainable to fans too. It's also, you come to an FCS game, you have a little bit more of a close experience to the players. And in our case, the players meet the people in the town. It's right there. They're not kind of like these pros in waiting. You can reach out, you can touch them, you can meet the coaches, you can do that stuff. It's just enjoyable football at a real high level still.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at GoCSB.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff. Former Brown Bear linebacker Zach Diassi has carved out a 10-year NFL career that includes 2 Pro Bowl selections and 2 Super Bowl rings. I caught up with the 3-time All-Ivy League performer at Giants camp as he detailed his journey and what he has seen from the Ivy League over the last decade.
Here with Zach Diassi at Giants camp. Thanks for taking time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. And you look at the fact that you guys have, you're a vet in the game. 10 years. How have you been able to stay involved in a game and in a league where the average career and average length of time is probably 3 years?
Well, the first honest answer is I'm a long snapper, so I don't get hit as much. But, my linebacker days, you approach every year as a new year, and you're just grateful for every year that you get under your belt. So whatever happened before, that upcoming year doesn't matter. All that matters is now. And, a lot goes into it with taking care of your body, eating right, and, just trying to be the best and trying always getting better. You can never plateau. You can never be satisfied with the current situation. So it's all about getting better.
Now, you can't undersell your linebacker days. You're an All-American linebacker at Brown. And, Brown could be considered like the FCS linebacker. You had John Woodring with the Jets, Bill O'Brien, coach with the Texans, and now you come into the league and you look at how can I say this, the constant talent that is across the Ivy League from top to bottom. How strong have you seen it get since you've left the league?
Well, there weren't too many when I entered into the NFL, but then I feel like the numbers have grown over the years. There's a lot of guys in training camp. I think we have upwards of around 15 or 20 currently. But it is good football. I think kids are starting to understand that you can get a great education, play some quality football, and make it into the NFL. And if whether you're going to LSU or Stanford or whatever, you can play ball, and the NFL will find you even in the Ivy League. So I think, again, kids are starting to value that education, and the quality of ball is getting a lot better.
Now, again, 10 years in, you've seen a lot of guys come in, a lot of guys go. If you're a college senior right now that's feeling undervalued, or a guy that's coming in, a rookie on this football team, what would you tell them, a bit of advice to give them to keep pushing to help get to where you are right now?
Well, you're going to get a shot, and you always got to keep pressing for that shot and never give up. Life after football will happen eventually, but never give up and always keep trying, because it's an opportunity that you'll never have again. So, whether it's taking care of your body or jumping in on, when you do get that opportunity, jumping in, taking your reps, taking control and showcasing your talents. Do whatever you have to do to show that you're a hustle guy, you're a talent guy, speed guy, whatever it may be. Showcase those talents and take ownership of them.
And final question, what is it you love about the game the most? Because it takes a lot of love to really be involved. I played college football and had to find my way back in it to do this. What is it about the game that keeps you captivated?
I think it's just, I've had a lot of teammates over the years, and seen a lot of my good friends come and go, but it's about, getting the team together in August and seeing new personalities, how they can contribute on and off the field, and sort of the camaraderie in the locker room. I think that's something that I cherish and really enjoy, being around younger kids, players my age. It's such a beautiful game, and everything that goes along with it. Typically, the football aspect is the obvious answer, but I think the locker room camaraderie is just, it's indescribable. It's just so much fun to be around here.
Well, we definitely wish you the best of luck moving forward, and hopefully we can get to see you another 10 years out here.
That would be nice. That'd be real nice. Thank you for having me. Appreciate
No problem.
it.
I think FCS presents such a great opportunity, at a school like Fordham and the rest of the Patriot League schools to get the best of both worlds. You're talking about, some of the top 60 academic institutions in the country. Combine that with, full scholarship Division I football that's able to compete on a national level. I think, from a recruiting standpoint and talking to other coaches, that's what we're identifying. We're identifying guys that academics and football are equally important. Not one more than the other, but truly equally important. I think that's the strength of FCS football, certainly in the Patriot League.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. It's time to take a look at some of the NFL draft prospects you want to keep an eye on as we bring you our 5th down draft outlook for Week 2.
One game that features a really good matchup is between Missouri State and Murray State. And for the Bears, you look at linebacker Dylan Cole, who's on the Senior Bowl watch list this year. Cole is a tremendous athlete that projects as an outside linebacker or weak side backer in the NFL. And you'll learn a lot about his ability in space in this matchup, because the other prospect to watch in this game is quarterback KADE Humphries of Murray State. Now, Humphries is coming off an excellent season for the Racers, where he led the nation in passing yards per game, and also completions per game. He's an efficient passer with mobility and has good intermediate to deep ball range. Now, I'm interested to see how he performs facing the pressure from this Bears defense. Derek Rivers of Youngstown State has a great chance to showcase his pass rushing skills this week versus the spread offense of West Virginia. Now, Rivers has great ball get off and shows the ability and fluidity in space, which is good because he'll more than likely be an outside linebacker as a pro. And again, this is a great game for him to showcase his skills versus the Mountaineers. One of my favorite players in the country is Lamar's running back KADE Harrington, who has the quietest 200-yard game last week versus Coastal Carolina. And Harrington is short but not small. He's an explosive threat as a runner and also as a receiver. And he's had big games versus FBS opponents before, i.e. versus Baylor. And this would be the great and perfect opportunity to make his name nationally known to the rest of the country. VMI's Aaron Sanders is a smooth route runner with above average athleticism and also body control. He reminds me a lot of former Colorado State receiver Rashard Higgins, who now plays for the Cleveland Browns. And I'm interested to see how Sanders does from a versatility standpoint in this game versus Morehead State, as he'll more than likely be moved across the formation throughout the ball game. And finally, another prospect on the Senior Bowl watch list is Adam Jones of Northwestern State. The 6'3", 215-pound safety plays center field for the Demons, but isn't afraid to fly up and run support and make a big hit versus the runner. Now, when you watch Jones's game, you'll see some similarities in Darren Sharper's game when he came out of William & Mary.
Every week you're going to have fans hit you up saying, hey, you were right about this pick, you were wrong about this selection, so why not throw it into a new segment here on the FCS Kickoff, where we were right and where we were wrong.
This one smells like an overtime type matchup, but I like North Dakota to go into Long Island and come away victorious. I think this one will ultimately come down to the ball control, who can control the football and who can get off the field on third down. With that said, I like Monmouth in a very tight but highly entertaining contest. I think Mercer finally breaks through and knock off the Bulldogs in yet another close ball game. I think both offenses will have issues moving the football, but the Blue Devils defense, led by safety Najee Brown and their special teams unit, will be able to push them over the finish line. And finally, a great matchup between two top academic institutions in this country as Richmond takes on Virginia. On the gridiron, this has the potential for an entertaining game. Both teams boast a lot of talent on the perimeter, which when you look at the line of scrimmage, that's where you can see why we have this game on our upset alert list. Look for a high-scoring game that'll come down to quarterback play, and that's where, in my opinion, Richmond has the advantage. I think Kyle Loletta will have success throwing the football to wide receiver Brian Brown, while defensively, defensive back David Jones, who can play anywhere on the back end, will become a household name after this one.
We've reached a part in the show where it's time to pick some games, and we're going to start with our FCS Kickoff Game of the Week as Eastern Washington travels to Fargo, North Dakota to take on the Bison of North Dakota State.
To use yet another boxing reference, styles make fights, and in this one you have a contrast in styles with the explosive passing game of Eastern Washington versus the well-balanced offensive attack of North Dakota State. The Eagles, led by wide receiver Cooper Kupp, are coming off an upset victory over Washington State, and 2 weeks ago, the Bison had a close call versus Charleston Southern, and it took overtime for them to win the ball game. Now, in order for the Bison to avoid the upset, they'll have to make quarterback Gage Gubrud one-dimensional, not allowing him to hurt you guys with his legs. Now, for Eastern Washington, is about forcing the Bison to adjust on the fly defensively. They may be without their leader defensively in Nick DeLuca, the linebacker, so you want to challenge that defense to make calls and get themselves lined up properly and ready to go to defend that passing game. That Charleston Southern game just gave me a bad feeling about this Bison offense. I think they'll have some issues early on, which will give the Eagles enough of a cushion or the space they need to be successful and open up a lead. I like Eastern Washington. Big time matchup here between Holy Cross and New Hampshire, and the Crusaders enter this contest with an excellent offensive line protecting quarterback Peter Pujols back there in the pocket. What the challenge is for the Crusaders this week is being able to match up in space versus New Hampshire. The Wildcats were blanked last week versus San Diego State, and New Hampshire could never really get their ground game going versus the Aztecs, which derailed their entire offensive game plan. Different game, different matchups this week, as I think New Hampshire's offensive line can win the battle in the trenches versus the Crusaders, while on the perimeter, the Wildcats secondary, I think, match up very well versus that spread offense of Holy Cross. I like New Hampshire. Pivotal game this early in the SWAC as Alabama State and Alcorn State meet. The Hornets handled themselves very well last week versus UT San Antonio, showing off a well-balanced offensive attack, while the Braves got all dressed up for nothing as their game versus Bethune-Cookman got canceled midway through the first quarter. However, for a brief moment, we saw the impact that Marquise Walford will make or will have on his Braves offense and how physical the Braves defense will be in 2016. Now, the Hornets defensively look to be very stout this year, led by linebacker Courtney Berry. They forced 4 turnovers last week versus the Roadrunners. I would say look for running back Khalid Thomas and that offensive line to slowly wear down the Braves defense. I like Alabama State in a close one. NEC versus Big Sky matchup between Bryant and Montana State, and both are coming off impressive week 1 outputs. I was impressed with the Bulldogs passing game, which if they can keep that up all season, it'll totally balance out their offensive attack and make them that much more dangerous moving forward. Montana State proved to be just fine without quarterback Dakota Prukop, as he's now with Oregon, as Tyler Brugman nearly led the Bobcats to an upset victory over Idaho. Biggest question in this ball game boils down to third down and who can get off the field and who can withstand third down offense. Now, I like the Bulldogs secondary, but I have some questions about their ability to stop the run. To me, that'll be the difference. I like the Bobcats. People laughed when I said the SoCon would be really tough this year, and we sit here now in week 2 with a huge game between Furman and the Citadel. Now, the Paladins look vastly improved over last year, and they gave Michigan State all they could handle last week, in the Citadel once again won late versus Mercer. I think both defenses will come ready to play. I don't think Furman, playing an option team, can afford a slow start on offense like they did last week. I do like the Citadel in this ball game. Look for cornerback D. Delaney to come up big in the special teams department. We have a great matchup in the state of California this week as San Diego takes on the Cal Poly Mustangs. Again, you talk about styles making fights. Well, here we are again with another one, as you have the dangerous spread attack of San Diego with the always dreaded triple option offense of Cal Poly, who nearly upset Nevada last week in overtime. For the Toreros, it's about winning on first down defensively to keep the Mustangs in second and long and third long situations. For Cal Poly, it's about hitting the Toreros with the unexpected, at least early on in the contest. Come out with some play action passes to keep them honest before getting back to business on the ground. This will be an entertaining game, so look for the Toreros to surprisingly control the pace in this one, speed up to slow it down, and pull off the upset over Cal Poly. Time to see who's on upset alert this weekend. It pains me to say that it's my fellow Raging Cajuns as they play host to McNeese State. Now, the Cowboys won the last meeting back in 2007 and are chomping at the bit to knock these guys off again. Now, the Cajuns offense came out flat last week versus Boise State in a blowout loss, and they also fired their defense coordinator immediately afterwards. Now, McNeese State is still one of the top 8 teams in the FCS in my opinion, and because they boast a well-balanced offensive attack and also are very good up front defensively, it makes them very hard to match up against. Keep an eye on Cowboys defensive tackle Isaiah Golden, as I think he'll slow down that explosive Elijah McGuire and that Raging Cajuns offense. I like the Cowboys.
So that's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. And if you miss any one of our episodes, you can find it on our website at footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. Also, subscribe to the FCS Opening Drive podcast, which you can find on iTunes.